Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 820. I had the white pieces this time and I start off with c4. The English opening and my opponent goes d6, a pretty rare move, but you can play lots of things against the English. That's one of the things the English player has to deal with is all these different setups that black might go for. But, well, in general, you get to choose your own setup too as white. And I had decided to go for the Botvinnik setup, which I do when I get the chance, and he hasn't done anything to prevent that. So he went with g6 here. e5 would be a normal continuation, and I could still go for the Botvinnik setup with that as well. Let's see, I go knight c3, and now c6 takes us actually out of the opening book. I did want to look at, this line. Bishop g7 would stay in book, and this would lead to, I think, a decent position. Yeah, I just wanted to show a e5 setup with black. And white has a number of choices. You see that d3 and e3 are the top choices here. But also, cancel that. But also you can play e4. It's the third choice on the list, and that would, again, continue in the Botvinnik setup. So, but anyway, he didn't play that way. He played c6. You might wonder why someone would play like this. It's a very small setup for black. But if you're comfortable playing in this kind of cramped position, it can be an effective blitz weapon because you can set it up and almost always get this position since you're not claiming very much here. so you're usually allowed to get away with that setup. It's just that it's not very promising for black. Anyway, he continues with the bishop g7. Black has to kind of wait around and look for mistakes and look for counter chances when he's playing like this. e4, e5. So these are kind of normal moves. I'm completing the Botvinnik setup. Knight f6 and go for d3. And that's the idea of the Botvinnik setup, this pawn triangle. These knights go here on e2 and c3 and the bishop on g2. And it looks funny to block in the bishop, but the idea is that you're going to break in the center and lines will open up and this will become a useful piece. And we actually saw it becoming useful much later in the game. Let's see. So I continue with bishop g4, which I think is mostly a time waster. I'm going to kick it back and I want to play h3 anyway. But I castled first. He castled. I played h3. And of course the bishop can't retreat. It'll get taken, it'll get trapped, so it can't retreat to h5, I should say. It can retreat, and it does drop back to e6, which is a fine square for that piece, and probably should have gone there directly. Let's say I go bishop e3. He goes queen to c8. Yeah, he's setting up a battery with this queen and bishop looking at the h-pawn. So I play king to the h2, the standard response, and now he goes h5. So h5 is the first move that I would really call a mistake. It's kind of a dubious move. You should just continue with normal development like knight b to d7. The chess engine also likes c5 here. In any of these cases, in either case, white would still be better, but it's a playable position for black. h5 is just asking for trouble because this g6 pawn is kind of the bulwark of black's position here, and it's already being weakened. It's only supported by a single pawn now. And notice that he's got two pieces on the queen side that have not been developed, and he's going to have trouble getting them into the game. They don't come into the game until way late, and so at this point, the chess engine is giving a winning edge to white, somewhere between 1 and 2 points. And the right answer is to immediately break with f4. This is part of the long-term plan anyway, but when black has weakened himself like this and failed to develop, then this is almost mandatory. So that was the right move here. He takes. Now taking back with the pawn is actually preferred by the chess engine, and as long as your king is not in danger of an attack, this can be a very effective pawn center here to control all of these squares around your opponent's king, and also to push forward either way and break things up. So yeah, taking with the pawn makes a lot of sense there. It also takes squares away from black's pieces. But anyway, I continued with knight takes f4. This is also still a winning continuation. He dropped his bishop back to d7 to avoid further weakening. If I were to take that bishop off, not only would it... oh, I guess he could take back with the queen. I was just thinking if he had to take with the pawn, then this guy on g6 would be loose. But he could have taken back with the queen. So I guess he just didn't want to give up the bishop. Anyway, I played queen d2. I'm connecting my rooks, and I'm looking to play my bishop into h6. So he went knight h7 here, and I played knight f to e2. But there's actually an interesting move here that the chess engine finds. I don't think knight f e2 is really a mistake, but this move is probably stronger. c5, and I didn't think about this idea. It's kind of interesting. So the chess engine expects that black will take, and then after bishop takes, the rook comes to e8, and then my other rook comes into the game. So it just this uses this bishop to push this rook away from defense of the f pawn, and just weakens black's position a little bit, and allows me to bring all of my pieces into the game. So that's a nice way to play. Let's see. I dropped my knight back to e2. I still want to get my bishop into h6, and I was a little concerned about his knight coming to g5 and ganging up on my h pawn. Although, of course, with the knight here, that pawn is defended. But anyway, that knight I kind of wanted to move because it's blocking things a little bit. Blocks both the bishop and queen battery, and also the rook f-file, potential battery on the f-file. So anyway, here he makes his second mistake, which is also a pawn move in front of the king. You don't want to move pawns in front of your king, especially when you're lacking in development. The chess engine suggests that there's a couple alternatives here, say queen d8, maybe adding some defense to the dark squares, or bishop to e6, getting the bishop out of the way so that the knight could come into the game. Anyway, it's funny because the bishop had just come from e6. But he went f5. And so this is definitely losing at this point. And I played pretty well for a while here, so this is okay. We get this exchange. Oh, he didn't take. He took on e4, and allows me to bring another piece over towards the king side. And then he traded rooks. So these are all mistakes. Every move there was a mistake. Basically, what black has done is has brought two of my pieces into the attack while losing one of his pieces from the defense. So this is really just an overwhelming position for white at this point. But I find a way to make it interesting. So let's see. He goes bishop to e5 here. No, I'm sorry. What did he play? Bishop to e5. Ah. Okay, brings this bishop out here. And then I played knight to g5. Well, that's not a bad move, actually, knight g5. It's just questionable because there was a move here that was a lot better. If you want to think about this position for a while, maybe you can spot the idea for white here. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. It is pawn to d4. It's interesting, I went to a lot of trouble to get this Botvinnik set up with the 3 pawns, and sometimes I forget that those pawns are mobile and should be pushed forward when you get the chance, especially if black hasn't clamped down. He never played c5, and he did play e5, but then that pawn got traded off. So my d4 pawn is free to move, and it's a very powerful push right here. First of all, the f6 square is covered, and bishop to h8 looks pretty horrible. Bishop to g7, maybe the best of several bad alternatives. And then I can just grab this pawn here in the center, hitting his queen. And once again, I've got this overwhelming attack. I've destroyed his center, and I have control of all of these squares. So anyway, that would be the quickest win here. Let's see. I went knight g5. I went bishop to f5. Blocking, one idea I had here is that trading off this knight and then bringing my rook to either to either f8, supported by the bishop, or to f7, say if I take the knight and he takes back with the king. And that looks like that's a strong invasion, so blocking with bishop to f5 was a pretty good response there. And then I went ahead and took, and that seems to be fine. And then this move, queen g5, gives away nearly all of my advantage. So once again, the culprit here was forgetting about the idea that I could push these pawns forward. So d4 is even stronger now, if possible. Let's see. The bishop goes to f6. I can chase this bishop away by pushing the g-pawn, and then that bishop is loose. The rook is on the f-file here. So probably bishop back to g7 also protects against rook f8 ideas. But I can trade and then play g4 anyway. I'm going to open up that f-file. The bishop drops back. And now queen g5 is just a winning move. I have the knight coming into f4, the bishop coming into e4, all that focused on the weak g6 pawn, which has no pawns to support it since both the f pawn and the h pawn have been pushed forward. So that's why that's why you don't want to do things like that. But when I played queen g5 first, it's just a little too eager. I needed to push his minor pieces back. Because in this position, queen g5 doesn't come with any immediate threats, and it gives him a moment to organize his pieces. So he plays some good moves here. Queen e6, he spent some time looking for that move, and he found it. Let's see, I bring my knight in, knight f4. This is actually a good move. I'm playing these moves well now that I missed the best part of my chance. Yeah, I played that queen g5 move really quickly. I guess I thought about that a lot in advance and then just played it, but there was a much better move there. Okay, so knight f4, this is a good move. He takes, I take with the rook, so I'm eliminating his pieces here and keeping my pieces on the attack. Brings his knight to d7, and I remembered that I do have this bishop, which has been kind of lurking back here. It was playing an important defensive role, but now it's time for it to join in the attack, and I did find it after some thought. And here he should just take it. It's his move. Rook f8 is actually the game-losing move. He could play on like this, say bishop takes e4, rook takes e4. The knight could hop into e5, and then the chess engine says the best thing I have is just bringing the queen back to e3. This gives the bishop a route back into the game, and it might turn into more about central play at this point. Maybe I play b3 to support the c-pawn, and then d4 again to kick the knight back. I guess there's a threat. Yeah, d4 is not such a threat right now because he can take the c-pawn hitting my queen. So a mutual attack there. But after defending the c-pawn, then playing d4, that's probably an idea for me. Anyway, there's an advantage to white here, but it's not that overwhelming advantage that I had earlier. And it was all because of that quick queen g5 move, which I should have prepared better, I guess. So anyway, that's what he should do here. He should take. Taking on h6 is just asking for trouble, and then I can really think about ways to crash through here, probably. I don't know. I mean, that line might have been playable too, but it gave white a better advantage than in the other line. I was going to say, I mean, it's just interesting after bishop takes here. You know, I want to bring my rook in, but his knight is covering that square. He's got those pieces over to the king side here just in time. And his queen is covering that square, and his rook and knight are both covering that square. So it's not so easy. And his queen and his king are defending the g-pawn here. So it would take some maneuvering for me to figure out how to proceed here. But there's still, like I said, an advantage to white in that line as well. Anyway, but he played rook to f8. And more than giving up the exchange here, this actually loses because it drags the knight away from the defense, and now there's no stopping my pieces from coming through, and even the move g4 here wins because that bishop has nowhere to go. Well, I can trade itself for my bishop, but then I can come in here. Oh, yeah, I guess that's not as clear. Although the chess engine rates G4 just as highly as Rook takes F5, but this was the cleanest finish. I thought I take the bishop, and he can't take it back because if he does, which he did in the game, this is a check and picks up the queen. So it's always nice to find a fun tactic like that and finish the game that way. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.